All right, Matt, and I'm sure this question is going to connect with you very well, but you and I have been doing franchising for quite some time. I
Sure.
hit 20 years in like 3 months, so crazy.
Oh,
But if I think through, one of the hurdles that a franchise buyer has to overcome is they've now found out about a franchise opportunity. They've landed on a website and they say, okay, it says buy a franchise. And so now I have to unpack and I need to go study what is franchising. And so, from a general sense, I think, and part of our discussion is going to work through this, franchise buyer lands on the Children's Lighthouse website and they're trying to figure out what franchising is. How would you explain the benefits and what is franchising in your own words?
sure. So, Children's Lighthouse started in 1997, and it took them many, many years to perfect this model. They made lots of mistakes. They made lots of things that they had to learn on how to make the business profitable. And so, really, one of the things that you're buying are a proven playbook, recipe kit, whatever you want to call it, of a system that has a proven business model. It's the processes, the systems, the tools, the brand recognition, and just everything that you need to ramp up quickly. And I always tell people, you're smart. You could probably figure out how to do this business, but it's going to take you many, many years to figure out all the details, and you'll make the same mistakes that we did over years. So, I've heard that, an analogy of it's like having an escalator to get you there faster. And in a lot of ways, that's part of it. And so for me, franchising is you're part of a brand that has a name, it's recognized, you have the support both on a model that works, but also an experienced operations team that's done that for years. I mean, we have an ops team that's been doing it a combined 250 years of experience. They know what to do, what not to do, all the metrics, all the key we call them, KPIs, key profit indicators, things that you need to be focused on, the marketing pieces on how to have enrollment, which is a key profit indicator for us, and how to appeal to that parent. And at the end of the day, you're wanting to create a profitable business that you can have for many years and eventually have an exit strategy and sell for multiple, so you can have a legacy for your kids in retirement. But you have that piece, but you're also a thing that doesn't really get talked about, I don't think, enough. I was a franchisee right out of college and knew nothing at 23. But I followed the system because I didn't know any better. But you also have other franchise owners who can become mentors, support, and that is a huge piece of that as well. You're not doing on the battle lines by yourself. So having that type of culture and community is another piece that you get in franchising. So, there's sometimes sayings can be corny, but there's a reason they're saying that. But, the thing that you hear over and over is that franchising, you're in business for yourself, but you're not by yourself. And there's a lot to that. You're not, a lot of people leave corporate America because they want to have that independence. They want to work for themselves and build the future instead of working for someone else. And, the fact that you are a CEO, but you have help when you need it is one of the great pieces of the business. So I've seen lots of people become extremely wealthy, do really well through franchising. And I'm a big fan of the model, grew up in the business and have seen it work for many, many different brands I've been a part of.
I'm going to come back to a few things, but I want to flip over to the process. So I land on the website. I just heard what you said. So basically, I could go do this on my own, but now I need website, I need brand, I need to find construction support, real estate support, curriculum support. Like the list just keeps going and going and going. And so clearly, I love your analogy of the escalator. I will be stealing that one. But you're getting the escalator to starting your business, and so even all the support and infrastructure that goes to making an escalator go from the bottom to the top is phenomenal. Now I get to I'm aligned on this. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. So I fill out this form on a website to have a conversation. Can you give me what's behind the scenes of that, and how does that process play out for a franchise buyer?
You're saying the initial conversation, how does that play out? Well, First thing you want to know is, at the end of the day, it's not just about you're dealing with a brand, you're dealing with people. Franchising is a relationship, and it's between, seeing, is this a good fit all the way around? And so we're having a conversation to see, a little bit about yourself. What are your, what's the rock in your shoe, as they say, for you to be calling us to have an interest in this? There's a reason. It's normally that they want to leave. They may not like their job. They may have been laid off. There's a reason we're having a conversation. But we also want to see, what is that they want to do? What are their dreams? I mean, you want to figure out what's the driver. Is it the dream of the person is it the husband has a dream? Is it the wife if they're married? But, what is it that they want to accomplish? But, what is it that drive? What is their passion? We deal with people who love kids, they love education, they want to make an impact on their communities. And it's not just about the unit economics. They do this because they have a passion for what they want. So we look at those type of things, and where they want to open. Is it an area that makes sense for us? Would it fit the demographics and all the things that we look at for? Because we're dealing with a high income customer with this piece. But it's also, you're also going to need to understand, do they have the financial capabilities to do that? And that's one of the biggest and core pieces of franchise success. You're going to have not only enough money to start the business, but you're going to have to, during that, launch period, you have to pay your bills. You have to cover your overhead. So do you have, whether, they talk a lot about having the runway to be able to afford that, whether you have savings, whether you have a spouse who can pay for that, whether you can get funding through different ways, you have to be able to have that. So, if all of those things line up and it looks like it's a great fit, you've got the financial capabilities to do this, you've got the desire, then we will schedule a brand presentation where we'll jump on a call like this, and I'll go in a lot more granular detail on the history of Children's Lighthouse. We'll get into how the model works. We'll go through opening a school, the whole process from site selection to construction, and we'll go through the support that you're provided, and we'll kind of give them a high level overview of what they get with the franchise. And from there, we'll see, is it worth going through our discovery process, which is typically around 12 weeks long, and we'll end with them coming to Fort Worth. We'll show them a school. They'll spend time at our headquarters, meeting everyone from our president to all our department heads. And says, they talk about, you compare this like you're dating. Because at the end of the day, you're getting married. And a lot of times, there's a 20-year franchise agreement. A lot of times that's longer than a lot of marriages. And so do we click? Is it a good fit? And so, a lot of looking at a franchise is that dating. And you need to find somewhere where it's a good fit all the way around, and you have a good feeling about it, and is it something that you're really passionate and excited about?
I'll make two comments there. One, I would respect a franchisor that is more careful about the fit than one that's not, because what you just said means you're also very protective of the other franchisees who are in your system. And the more protection that you build around where they've invested a significant portion of their life savings into this business, that means you're going to do the same for me. And to a buyer, like when you're thinking about how in depth this process is, you shouldn't be intimidated by this. You should actually appreciate it because of the structure that's behind it. Other comment, because I've heard it twice, and I'm gonna share this insight. I'd love any more comments on this. I've been working on a persona project with another brand, very similar on the investment side, and I'm interviewing franchisees, current franchisees on their process of buying, what tripped them up in the education side, and what tripped them up from a cultural side. And one thing that's come out is just this shift of corporate America into business ownership. In corporate America, most of these folks, because you've had to build up some wealth, have taken on a executive level position. And the trigger that ends up making them make the change is they look at who's above them, or the possibility of continuing to move up and build additional wealth for their families. That either triggers it, or they look at how much is the runway of wealth that I can build for my family and say, oh boy, it's not going to get to where the outcome that I wanted. I'm going to make a shift. Right. What trips them up, though, is when you're a high level executive in corporate America and have made a lot of money as an employee, you look around at a brand, and if that infrastructure isn't there, or if it starts to feel like corporate America, like a franchisor that uses an iron fist or iron thumb to manage you, like those two things can create turbulence. And so when you're thinking about the transitional period of going from corporate executive into Children's Lighthouse, what should I expect as that transition? What does that transition look like?
Sure, and again, your first point, we're pretty picky on who joins us. One of the things that's different is from our brand, we're on our second generation of the Brown family who owns us. So we're one of the few franchises in the space that's not owned by corporate America. So there's a different culture we have, a lot more of a family feel. I think the reality is a lot of private equity can be kind of draconian and much more focused on driving P&L versus, we're trying to do what's right for the franchise owner. But, it is a different kind of a culture. But as far as moving to what we're going to, becoming an owner with us, a couple things that are different from, we are a director focused and run franchise, meaning the franchise owner is not working 50 hours a week in the business like a lot of businesses, franchises I've been a part of. A director runs the day-to-day. They're going to be doing this. The owner might spend 20 hours a week after the school opens. They might go by once or twice after the first year, maybe 10 hours a week. So you're managing a team. So it's more of a CEO level role. So I think of those people leaving corporate America, that's what they're looking to do. They want to drive the bus, and they want to be their own boss, and they want to manage a team. I'm rereading the E-Myth book that Michael Gerber that everyone talks about. And, if it's working, you hear another, phrase you hear all the time in franchising, in small business in general is, you want to be working on the business, not in the business. Ray Kroc didn't have his office in a McDonald's restaurant. It was down the street. He's not flipping burgers. And that's similar to what we look at. This is a business that can scale rather quickly, and having a team who runs the business and managing them is a key part. This is one of the things we learned at COVID is that, the owners that were there 50-hour weeks micromanaging didn't do as well as the owners who were able to delegate and trust and have a good team that ran the business. And again, I think that's one of the pieces that's really unique with this model. There are no nights or weekends, and the fact that it's not an absentee business, but you can have a business where it's not dependent on you being in the business for the business to work. Whereas a lot of businesses, home service companies I've been a part of, owners after 5 years are still working 50 hours. They are the business. They can't take a vacation. And that's one of the big appeals to this one is you can go for several weeks off in the summer and the business still continues to go. And that, if you look at, as I get older, and I'm sure you know this as well, time is your most precious asset. And so working a corporate job, and I've started out working corporate America as well, you're working 70, 80 hours a week. You're not going to get that time back with your kids. You're not going to be able to, see those baseball games and all those things that you missed. And so and that's really the dream for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not just the financial piece, but it's also the time aspect and being able to control that instead of having someone else control your time. And so those are, to me, some of the big drivers for this business.
I'm going to call this Matt's genius statement. Like something you just said, I think is super important to a buyer. I mean, in essence, you're buying the CEO position. And if you think about people that don't go into franchising, someone that's created wealth and they start buying businesses, they're buying the CEO position. Like they're buying a business that they're in control of. There's already infrastructure in place. It happens with the wealthiest of wealthy. And so what you just said, I think if someone's out there and, stuck in corporate America, wanting to get the time back, wanting to build wealth for their family, if you think of this as you're buying yourself the CEO position through an infrastructure of a great business model that's already created, it's a great position. And I'm appreciative of you saying that statement. From a trip up standpoint to the buyer, and you've dealt with a lot of buyers that have gone through the initial call, have learned what franchising is, and then they get this giant document called an FDD, the franchise disclosure document. Are there
Right.
things that trip them up there? Are they like, well, why do I have to pay royalty? Which, in my opinion, is just operational cost of the business because you got infrastructure behind you. It's not really royalty. But are there things that trip up the buyers now that they've been disclosed?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing you get this giant document that's over 200 pages, so the whole thing can be a little overwhelming when you look at it, and it's regulated by the FTC, so there's certain language that you have to put in there. We have an FTD call very early on with our VP of operations to walk through the highlights of it, and we share kind of an overview of what it looks like, and the reality it's to protect prospective buyers from franchisors who may be, not frankly being a little shady in the past. But it's also to protect the franchise for the brand and to make sure that if you do have someone going rogue, that it's going to protect the other franchisees. So you need to have structure, you need to have processes, but you need to be able to protect the entire brand as well. So, I think, walking them through the investment in that's one piece. Walking them through your item 6, the fees that we charge, and how much lower ours are, frankly, than many of our private equity competitors. We explain that, but the other piece that we're also real clear on. Everyone has the same document. We don't do edits. We're not doing multiple negotiation. So at the end of the day, we want everyone to be on the level playing field, just like they wouldn't want someone to after they purchase to get a better deal. So that's another piece that we want to make sure everyone is clear on how that works. But in general, when you're explaining how the process works, if you can walk them through just to make the startup, the expenses, and what's expected of them, but it also outlines what's expected of us. It's and ours is written in a very clear manner. You should be able to hopefully walk them through it so they're not feeling overly concerned at the end of the day.
If you think back to your career in franchising, and obviously, and the statement that I continuously say is, if you and I go back to the day before we're in franchising and say explain it, it would be very hard for us. We might say McDonald's, but we don't know what it is. And so to the franchise buyer that is thinking about going through this, it's just as complex. If you talk to a franchisee that's been in Children's Lighthouse for 20 years, they're going to have plenty of insights when backcasting to say, this is what I would have done differently. If you think through your career or moments that you were like, man, if I would have just known this to help a franchisee understand like what is the opportunity, is there anything that comes top of mind of things that you've reflected backwards on and said, in my career, I've learned X that would have been very valuable early on?
Well, yeah, and again, I was a franchisee, became multi-unit, and I always kind of go back to those eras because I made tons of mistakes and things that I'm embarrassed to think about that I did, including wearing a Captain Color Time outfit and doing a commercial which was a huge bust, and I hope it doesn't exist on YouTube anywhere.
I'm gonna go find that, Matt.
But I learned early on, you need to follow the system. And you hear that every time I go to a conference, talk to a franchisor, you buy a system for a reason. And when you veer, and it's very common to veer off course, and to try to do your own thing or thinking that you're smarter than the franchisor or whatever, they have a proven model. So that is a critical piece. Just following the system is key. Continuing to market, it's effective. It's sometimes when things are tough, the first thing you think about is, well, I'm just going to stop marketing, which, there's a thing called the death spiral. You stop marketing, your sales go down, you start firing people, and you don't get out of it. And you really have to do the opposite of that, kind of like you're skidding on ice. You're supposed to turn into it, which doesn't make sense. And so you need to do the opposite. You need to spend more, frankly. You need to market more aggressively. You need to bring in more salespeople. And those are things that when you're new, you don't make sense. But, I've got a franchise owner in Houston was saying when they first started, they hired a director who was not from our system, and they were like, don't follow the system. We're going to do it our way. Well, their enrollment wasn't very good and they were struggling. So he followed the system to a T. Their enrollment went through the roof. And he's like, right now, if you tell me to use black garbage bags, we're not using white. It's all in the system. If it doesn't exist in the children's Lighthouse ops manual, Lighthouse links, it doesn't exist. And you guys have helped make me a millionaire just from following your system. So to me, that's why you join us, a franchise, and you can bring in best practices, but being engaged in the system, not being an island, attending all the conferences, but following that system to me would be the number one thing I would share.
Yeah, two comments off of that. One is, if you go into Michael's office tomorrow and say, "Hey, I think we should start selling lights and boats because we're Children's Lighthouse," he'd be like,
Right.
"What?" And if you then went and said, "Hey, Michael, guess what? I actually just sold a light franchise and a boat franchise off of it," he'd be like, "Matt, you're fired." And so you
Right.
think about like the construct of following a system, like we're already designed to do that as humans when you've gone through a career in any capacity, because you do have to stay in line. You can sometimes have some innovation and ideas and raise your hand and say, "Hey, have you thought about this?" And that, I think that's always encouraged in a franchise, or like raise your hand and say, "Have you thought about this?" That's accessing the power of the collective. But following the system ends up showing the completeness of the best franchisees. And that second line you said, the marketing piece, I've told this story before, but I was at a conference. They had the top 3 franchisees on stage. Number 3 came from middle of the pack to all the way up to number 3. So like number 50 to number 3 over the course of a year. And the question from the moderator was, "What did you do differently?" And he said, "I spent 10 cents of every dollar on marketing." And the franchisee next to me in the audience pokes me in the side with his arm. He goes, "That guy's an idiot." I'm like, "He's on stage. Listen to what he just did. He followed the system. He continued to market until like the snowball effect happened, and he had enough customers where the referral base was so strong that he could then dial it back a little bit." And so it's amazing to me how simple this roadmap is, but for whatever reason, and maybe it's because we play as an industry with the word entrepreneur, you're more so entrepreneurial and more so a leader in a franchise than you are designed to be a crazy founder. And so maybe that's where some of the misconstrued expectations come from. But I think what you just said, as simple as it is the roadmap to success. If you want to win, you've already proven the model. Why would you dare do anything differently?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen this in multiple franchises. I hear this every time I go to a conference. And I think it's just human nature to do that. And then I think part of it, our job is to explain why they want to follow the system. We've got, P&Ls, and we've got a system called Profit Keeper, so we can show them how our top performers do, how they compare to top performers, and why they should be spending money on advertising and what payroll should be, and things like that you're not going to get on your own. That's another real powerful piece. But almost universally, the ones who follow the system are going to do the best. It's the reality.
Let's close on this, Matt. There's obviously ghost candidates, people that are going to watch this video on the websites, wherever. They're thinking about franchising. They've thought about Children's Lighthouse. They have not filled out the form, or even worse, they filled out the form, and then when you're like, "Hey, are you ready to talk?" they go unresponsive.
Right.
What would you say to that person on why they need to think about this now?
Well, a couple reasons. The demand for this is greater than anything I've ever seen. There's frankly an emergency for childcare in our country. 2 out of 3 kids are in some form of childcare, which is pretty amazing. Your average home value has doubled in the last 5 years. You're going to have more dual income families than ever. We just opened a school in May at Austin, 220 capacity school. 3 weeks before it opened, we had 255 prepaid registrations. So literally it was sold out before the school opened. So the demand is incredible right now. It's a business that has great unit economics. It's a business that can create generational wealth, unlike anything I've ever seen. And it has a lifestyle potential that is also something I've not seen before. So it's a business that has great unit economics, great lifestyle capacity, but you're also making a huge impact for thousands of families and kids. And you're making just a major contribution to communities and your local society. So those are all to me, as I get older, things that you want to make an impact on this world while you're here. And I can't think of a business where you make a bigger contribution.
Well, and I'll add this in closing, Matt. You said the value of time. As we all get older, we start looking at what is the value of time. And so if you continue to sit on making this change in your life, all you are is delaying where you ultimately want to get to. And sometimes you need the encouragement of others to be pushed off the edge. And so what I would also say to a candidate that has watched up to this point, filling out that form and having a conversation with Matt costs $0. And sometimes that might be enough of a motivation to help encourage you to take this next step in your life. And that's what I would do. I would, even if you're not ready right now, having a conversation doesn't hurt. And it costs nothing. And you can obviously tap into Matt's expertise of franchisee to franchisor. There's tremendous value in Matt's story. So Matt, thanks for doing this. Hopefully this has been valuable to any candidate that has watched this. We're here to help guide you through what is franchising. And Matt, you've done an excellent job of doing so. So appreciate you doing this.
Good to talk to you. Thanks, Nate. I appreciate it.
For Matt, I'm Nick. Thanks for watching.